Hey man, welcome back to Let's Talk, where we spend some time answering questions you want to hear.
Yeah.
Man, Pastor, we had an amazing time last time talking about your conversion date.
Right. We all have conversion dates. So my big question is now I want to get to know Pastor Kieran. Besides the fact that you were the starting running back for the Los Angeles Rams last year. Okay, that may or may not be true, but really tell us your story. Like, how did you find Christ?
Hey man.
How did you get in this room?
Yeah, I'll tell you. First, how I got in this room is Pastor Brent sought me and hunted me down. But honestly, it was cool, man.
I feel like I'm on an African safari, like hunting down.
He was like a
coaching,
recruiter, like a literally coaching recruiter. Like, hey, here's what's going on. So it's pretty cool. But what's cool about my conversion is I grew up in a Christian home. Right. My dad was a pastor. My mom loved the Lord, and so every single moment in my home, because my parents are Haitian, so there's like all these Haitian music engulfing the whole living room, and my dad is like singing praises and
Creole worship.
Exactly.
Come on, spit some Creole for us. You speak Creole.
Jésus-Christ, Remel, bon Dieu, whatever.
You just talked about your mama.
Yeah.
You just said something about your mama.
All the Haitians like, your Creole stinks, but it's all right. But I just wanted to be in the world. You know, I envied everything. My parents didn't let me do anything. I couldn't go to the movies, y'all. Like, I couldn't watch a movie. I couldn't hang it. Super conservative and strict. And so I remember I just wanted so badly to do what everyone else was doing.
Right.
And so I got to the point where I got to play some football in college. I went to, not Ohio State, but a college in Ohio. I wish I was at Ohio State.
So it's not Ohio State, but it's in Ohio, and it's in the state of Ohio. So we'll call it Ohio State.
We'll call it Ohio State. I like that. I played football, man. I was so focused on my athletics that I forgot about the academic, and I just did all the stupid things that college kids do.
Right.
My grades slipped, and I moved back here to Florida because I couldn't play football anymore. So I essentially dropped out. And I remember, I'll never forget my dad. My dad, in his Haitian accent, he said, "Son, what are you doing?" And I was like, I don't know. And that question hit me so hard.
Right.
And I remember I was working a job in Tampa. I was doing overnight. I hated the overnight. I was working from 10 to 7 and sleep all day and then work from 10 to 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And I was sitting on a forklift and I was listening to all these kind of like crazy hip hop music and stuff like that. And this song by this little girl, Barlow girl, I think her name was. I need you to love me. Yes, man. Can you like imagine? I'm like this dude, like listening on the forklift, and it comes on, and I'm listening to it, and all of a sudden God jacked me up.
Yeah.
He showed me who I was and who He was, and right then and there I changed. Everything God changed.
Were you like crying on the forklift?
I was weeping. I wasn't crying. I was snot-nosed, boogers running down my face, crying.
Dude, all I can picture right now is like the warning sign next to the forklift of like, must wear eye protection, must wear ear protection, no crying on the forklift. You're like running into stuff
I'm like,
you can't see.
I had to get off. I had to get off the forklift. I was crying. People were walking by like, what is wrong with this dude? And, I'll never forget. I changed my verbiage, so I stopped saying cuss words, and so I'd say stuff like shoot, and people would make fun of me. I'm like, oh shoot. They're like, what he just said?
You went all Bobby Bob.
I went all, yeah, exactly.
Dadgummit.
Like, oh, flipping, all that crazy stuff.
That's awesome.
God changed my life so radical. And I remember texting my wife now, but my girlfriend then. I was like, hey, what's tithing? How much should I give? You know what I'm saying? I was like, what do I need to do? I'm like, all these things is crazy. I was a church kid, but I didn't know anything. And so, man, God changed my life right then and there. And ever since then, it's been really a milestone of God trying to call me and reach after me. And that's what's so important about really the love of God is He pursues us. He pursues you like nobody else. And I'm just so grateful for that I had a God that pursued me and sought after me.
Yeah.
And He's seeking after every single one.
That's so good. Here's the thing. This is my opinion. I think this is biblical. That you have to have like to be saved. It does take a conversion moment. Mm-hmm. Like there's got to be like something that's you're not the same anymore. And some people are like, I went to church and I raised my hand, or I prayed this prayer and nothing actually changed. Like if nothing changed, then what are you saved from?
Right.
Like to be saved, for God to rescue you, He pulls you out of something. And sometimes it's more gradual than others. Sometimes it's radical, instant, like you're not the same person. Other times it's a little more gradual, but there is a change.
Yeah.
Like did you feel different?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I was a new person.
Right.
I felt different.
Right.
Kind of felt re-energized. You know what I mean?
Right. So that was me, man. I like colors all of a sudden were brighter and popped, and like everything was so much better. It was like Eden, right? You're going back to God's presence. and like everything was so much better. And that's what it's about, right?
That's what it's about. But you know what I struggle with, and I think here's a question for the day. Like I heard this phrase all the time in the Bible, in a church. Do not be unequally yoked. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean to not be unequally yoked?
Don't we use like weird phrases in the church?
Like what the heck?
Like, don't be unequally yoked. You're like, is that like an egg? Like you have like one egg that's bigger.
Take
like
the egg white out?
Like the egg has to be the same size before I eat. Anyway, yeah. No, that's a great question. The Bible talks about being unequally yoked. Specifically, the New Testament and Jesus talks about being unequally yoked. And what happens is you have yoke of oxen, right? And so in the old times, I mean, most of us aren't getting up in the morning and getting on our wagon and our yoke of oxen and going forward. But in the old times, in the Bible times, you would have a yoke of oxen that would oftentimes plow fields and be used for all kinds of things. And you would yoke them together. You got double the horsepower, right? Which is actually, it's great science, but it actually more than doubles it. So you got the double yoke of oxen. And if one oxen is not as strong, or if one oxen has a whole nother path, or if one oxen has a whole nother idea of what it means to be yoked, well, then all of a sudden you have unequally yoked. And so one wants to go right, one wants to go left. Sometimes, and I've heard these different variations of what this means. I mean, maybe it's an oxen yoke next to a horse, or an oxen yoke next to a donkey. That never works because you got two radically different viewpoints and personalities of the two animals and the way that they work together. So you actually want two oxen yoked together that are both the same and on the same path. And so what happens is, like, people right now are like, what in the world does that have to do with my life? Like, I'm not yoking any oxen together. Like, that's beautiful. Here's what the connotation is that when you are in a relationship with somebody, you want to be in a relationship that when you yoke yourself together, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, you're yoking yourself together. You're tying yourself together. That yoke is that wooden thing that goes over the top of the oxen. You're tying them together. And so you don't want somebody who's going this way when you're going that way.
Right.
I mean, it's just a constant friction. And if you've ever had a relationship like that, you know, like it's a constant friction of where are we going? And so in biblical terms, it really has to do with wanting to follow Christ. So if you got one person who's trying to be a disciple of Christ, it means you're following in the footsteps of Christ. If you got one person who's trying to do that and another person who's going their own route, well, now you got constantly Kieran's trying to go that way and I'm trying to go this way, and we're just like fighting each other. And if you've ever been in a relationship like that, you know. I just talked to somebody this week and they were giving a testimony. They said how awesome church was. And the second they got home, their husband was like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. She's all excited about church. He's anti-church right now. They're unequally yoked. And so she has all this excitement and she can't share it with him. And not only can she not share it, it's disheartening. It's frustrating. And so that's what it means to be unequally yoked. And that's why, especially when you're young or when you're dating, you want to date somebody in the church. Like, this sounds crazy. The best place to find your future spouse is in the church.
You heard it right here. You heard it right here.
Right. Where's Billy? The best place. No, in all seriousness, I found my wife in the church. I know you basically did the same thing. That really is because that's where you find somebody who's equally yoked. Here's the advice I always give people. You've probably heard this before. It's not original to me. But chase God as hard as you can. Follow after him as hard as you can. And then look to your right and left and see who's keeping up with you. And that's the kind of person you want to marry. And so that's what needs to be on equally yoked.
That is so good, because there's a lot of young people who don't hook up with people, whether it's a friendship or relationship, or people who don't have the same common ground. And
right.
What I've learned, if you don't have the same common ground, it's easy for you to compromise. And so
good.
that is so true. And that's what we want to do. We want to find people who believe the same thing we believe in. You want a relationship? You heard it from the pastor himself. Go to the church.
We'll play matchmaker. We'll have those moments where, like, if you're single, raise your hand, and everybody can look around and
you can find your husband or wife here. But honestly, it's important to find somebody who believes the same thing you believe in.
Yeah.
And so that's a great thing. So do that today.
So good.
Find and adjust your relationship. Hey, that's what we're here to do. Answer questions you want to hear. We'll hopefully see you again next time.
Out.
On Let's Talk. Peace.